All right, good evening. So, good evening and welcome back to JPC Spiritual Talk. It's Jared Campbell. So, this evening, we're going to be making some connections. We're going to talk about Maduro wins, or talk about Venezuela. Even though there's coup claims, things going on in Venezuela. We're going to talk about U.S. sanctions criticized, rifts within the CIA, Ukraine media controls are going to be exposed. Those are some of the talking points this evening. But before we get into this, start out by asking the Lord prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I'm going to ask the Lord. And I'm going to ask Christ, my God, without you, I can do nothing. Please help me with this task I'm about to complete. Keep me honest, keep me truthful, keep me objective to the facts and sources, and always keep me as the apple of your eye. And great is truly your faithfulness. And we pray all this in your holy name, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forever, throughout the endless ages. Amen. All right, the Lord is our shepherd. All right, so we're going to jump into this. So we're going to start out first talking about Venezuela. So as I get this screen shared over, all right, you're just going to see an article on the screen. It's going to be up just so you can have like a visual. There's videos that we're going to watch. It's in this article, but we're going to get a backstory first, right? So, according to official results, right, Nicolas Maduro has won a third term as the president of Venezuela with 51.2% of the vote. The National Electoral Council announced that with 80% of the ballots counted, Maduro secured more votes than his main rival, Armando Gonzalez. The results have sparked national and also international controversies and has drawn mixed reactions. Some global leaders have congratulated Maduro, while others have expressed skepticism or have demanded transparency. Here are some key points. The election results. Maduro received 51.2% of the vote. His main rival, Armando Gonzalez, received 44%. The National Electoral Council announced the results with 80% of the ballots counted. Right? Those are objective facts. Right? Opposition reactions. The opposition, including Gonzalez and Corina Machado, disputed the results, alleging election rule violations. Machado was barred from running due to corruption charges, claimed victory for the opposition. International reactions. Russia and China congratulated Maduro, emphasizing their strategic partnership with Venezuela. The U.S. and Chile expressed skepticism, with the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken citing serious concerns about the election's legitimacy. Regional allies like Cuba, Honduras, and Bolivia also congratulated Maduro. Maduro's response. Maduro called his victory a triumph of peace, stability. He mocked the opposition fraud claims and thanked his supporters. Maduro's victory in the Venezuelan presidential election has solidified his position for a third term, but it also has intensified political divisions within the country and drawn mixed international reactions. Opposition leaders and some international figures question the election's legitimacy, which may impact Venezuela's political and diplomatic landscape. Here's our ability to make connections. The re-election of Nicolas Maduro can be connected to broader themes of political stability and also legitimacy in Latin American countries. This event also highlights the influence of international relationships and alliance as seen in the contrasting reactions from the countries like Russia, China, and the U.S. The situation underscores the ongoing struggle between governmental authority and the opposition movements in Venezuela, reflecting the complex dynamics of power, governance, and external influences. The Washington Post also reported that the U.S. sanction policies have become excessively widespread and unmanageable, affecting a third of the world's nations and 60% of low-income countries. Right? Let me repeat that. The Washington Post reported that the U.S. sanctions policy has become excessively widespread and unmanageable, affecting a third of the world's nations and 60% of low-income countries. This increase in sanctions since the 9/11 attacks has overwhelmed the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, and failed to achieve significant foreign policy objectives. Experts and former officials criticize the overuse of sanctions and highlight their severe humanitarian impacts. Expansion of sanctions. The U.S. now imposes 3 times more sanctions than any other country or international organization. Sanctions target a third of all nations and 60% of low-income countries. Wow. The workload has overwhelmed the OFAC, which needs help managing the extensive sanctions network. I believe so. Operational strain. The OFAC is then doing it with tens of thousands of requests from private sector seeking to avoid sanction violations. Due to high volume, decision-making or sanctions have been outsourced to nonprofits and also think tanks. Internal criticism. OFAC and Treasury staff have called to reduce sanctions use, but have been ignored by higher-ups. Former officials described the system as out of control and overused. Effectiveness of sanctions. Sanctions have often failed to achieve their intended goals, such as regime change or halting nuclear programs. Examples include North Korea, Syria, Venezuela, and Russia, where sanctions did not lead to desired political changes. Humanitarian impact. Sanctions have had severe humanitarian consequences, including starvation in North Korea and significant economic contractions in Venezuela, leading to thousands of deaths. Critical perspectives. Experts argue that the reflexive use of sanctions does not consider their collateral damage similar to war's effects. Interesting. The U.S. sanction policies has become excessively complex and widespread, leading to operational challenges and failing to meet many political objectives. The overuse of sanctions has had devastating humanitarian impacts on affected populations, and there's a growing call for a more measured and thoughtful approach to their implementation. Once again, our ability to make connections. The extensive use of sanctions by the U.S. can be connected to broader issues of international relations and economic warfare. The policy's evolution reflects shifts in the U.S. foreign policy post 9/11 and illustrates the challenges of using economic measures for political leverage. The humanitarian impacts of sanctions draw parallels with the ethical considerations and other forms of conflict, highlighting the need to balance achieving political goals and minimizing harm to civilian populations. The discussion around sanctions and other intersects with debates on the efficiency and morality of foreign intervention and economic punishment and global politics. So President Nicolas Maduro, now we're getting to the good stuff. So it's kind of like an opening here, right? So we can see what's going on. So President Nicolas Maduro has warned of an attempt coup following his contested re-election for third term. Protests erupt across Venezuela, led by supporters of opposition candidate Armando Gonzalez, who claimed the election was rigged. The Venezuelan National Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner with 51% of the vote. The international response, we know, has been mixed, with some countries refusing to recognize results and recalling diplomats, while others have pledged support for Maduro. We know about the election results and protests. Maduro's coup allegations. Maduro accused far-right factions of attempting a coup. He characterized the opposition's actions as fascist and counter-revolutionary. International reactions. The U.S. expressed severe concerns about election results. Argentina and several other Latin American countries refused to recognize Maduro's victory and recalled their diplomats. 9 Latin American countries called for an emergency OIS meeting. Cuba, Honduras, and Bolivia supported Murado's reelection. National Electoral Council, the CNE. The CNE did not immediately release detailed tallies from polling stations. The opposition views the CNE as favoring the ruling party. Interesting, right? Murado's reelection has intensified political instability in Venezuela, leading to widespread protests and accusations of electoral fraud. The situation has also strained international relations with varying responses with different countries. The ongoing unrest and international scrutiny underscore the deep political divisions within Venezuela and the challenges that is facing Murado's government. The contested election of Venezuela connects to a broader political legitimacy, governance, and international diplomacy themes. The allegations of electoral fraud and the subsequent protests highlight issues of democratic processes. The global reactions reflect geopolitical alliances and tensions, with countries taking stances based on their strategic interests. The situation mirrors similar conflicts in other nations, where disputed elections lead to civil unrest and international intervention, illustrating the global challenges of maintaining democratic integrity and also stability. Venezuelan president. We're going to stop there real quick, all right? So we're going to look at some of these videos. This was happening in Venezuela. So demonstrators reportedly tried to block highways, including one that connects the capital, right, with their international airport. So let's look at this. All right. I've seen videos, though, of some of the soldiers giving their weapons to civilians. So I don't know if it's like just an isolated event or it's going to be the whole country, but there's a lot of mixed reporting coming out of Venezuela right now, but we're going to keep our eyes on it. But as we move on, right? So I found something interesting that kind of goes along with what we're talking about. So the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, apparently he has labeled billionaire Elon Musk as an arch enemy, accusing him of trying to destabilize Venezuela. This attentively. This accusation follows Musk's comment on social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, where he alleged major election fraud after Maduro's controversial re-election. Interesting. The exchange highlights the tension between political figures and influential tech billionaires, right? Here's some key points. Maduro's accusation against Musk. Maduro accused Musk of disrupting peace and stability in Venezuela. Maduro's comments came after Musk claimed on social media that there was significant election fraud in Venezuela. Maduro challenged Musk to a physical fight. It's crazy. Accusing him of fascist ideology and attempting to invade Venezuela with rockets and an army. Election results. We know about the election results. Maduro had 51% compared to Armando Gonzalez, 44%. Of course, the opposition claimed the election was rigged, leading to these protests, these nationwide protests. Right? It's getting violent there. Musk's response. So Elon Musk mocked Maduro by sharing a video of his speech with a caption. The caption making fun of the president in Venezuela. Context and background. Maduro has been in power since 2013, following the death of Hugo Chavez. His re-election has been met with skepticism and accusations of fraud from the opposition and international observers. This is not Elon Musk's first confrontation with a foreign official. He previously clashed with Brazilian Supreme Court justice over free speech and misinformation issues. Interesting. Murado's reelection continues to be highly contested. We see that, leading to national unrest and international criticism. Elon Musk's unusual involvement highlights the growing influence of tech billionaires in global political discourse. Murado's response to Musk's accusations reflects the strained political climate in Venezuela and broader geopolitical tensions. So Elon Musk's involvement in the Venezuelan election controversy can be connected to the broader phenomenon of tech billionaires playing active roles in the political and social issues worldwide. It also illustrates how social media platforms and figures like Elon Musk can also impact political narratives and international relations, right? The clash between Murado and Musk also underscores the intersection of technology, media, and politics in shaping public opinion and also political stability. This incident echoes other incidents where tech leaders have confronted political authorities, highlighting involving dynamics of power and influence in the digital age. So some of the connections I've made so far: political legitimacy and governance. Murado's contested re-election and allegations of election fraud reflect ongoing political legitimacy and governance issues in Venezuela. The theme reoccurs in discussions of U.S. sanctions and international reactions. So I brought some of that up, highlighting the struggle of democratic integrity in politically volatile regions, international influence in geopolitics. The varied international responses to Murado's re-election, ranging from support from Russia, China, and regional allies to skepticism from the U.S. and other Latin American countries, underlying geopolitical complexities. The sanctions report also emphasizes how international actions influence domestic politics as well as stability. Role of sanctions and economic pressures. The extensive use of U.S. sanctions, as discussed in the Washington Post report, demonstrate how economic measures are wielded as foreign policy tools. This connects to the Venezuela situation, statistically, where sanctions have had significant humanitarian and economic impacts, influencing public opinion and political dynamics. Media and social media influence. Elon Musk's involvement via social media exemplifies the growing power of digital platforms, as well as figures like Elon Musk in shaping political discourse. The role of media in the Venezuela protest. Musk's accusations and Murado's response all illustrate the profound impact of information and also public perception. Humanitarian impact and ethical considerations. The humanitarian consequence of U.S. sanctions, such as starvation and economic distress, parallel the suffering in Venezuela due to political instability and financial mismanagement. These reports highlight the ethical considerations in implementing policies that affect vulnerable populations. Murado's accusations of a coup, and the stance of where they see him right now contrasts with the opposition to democratic aspirations. This tension of global struggles between these regimes and movements for democratic change, reflecting broader patterns in countries facing similar challenges, right? Economic stability, development, public unrest, and civil disobedience. Global power dynamics, yes. Right? So comparing Venezuela's situation with that of other countries facing similar issues like Belarus and Zimbabwe can provide insights into the effectiveness of different strategies for dealing with contested elections. All right. So we're going to move on now. So we're going to talk about some leaked emails. So we're going to talk about these leaked emails, and then we're going to kind of go back in time to March and April that was reported by international sources, and then we're going to close out. So we're going to start out by talking about these leaked emails, right? So leaked emails from the National Endowment of Democracy, NED, have exposed internal conflicts and public relations disaster. A call between NED's VP for communication, Leslie Unn, and journalists from the Gray Zone resulted in severe backlash, leading to the firing of Unn and other senior officials, Michael Allen. The incident has highlighted a civil war within the NED between its traditional neoconservative members and the newer, more progressive management. Public relations fiasco. A phone call to address accusations against NED embarrassed Leslie Unn, describing her performance as ignorant. The fallout from this call led to significant internal criticism and eventually the firing of Unn and Allen. Internal conflict. Emails revealed deep risks within NED between traditional neoconservative members and new progressive management. Conflicts over issues such as mandatory diversity training in response to geopolitical events like the October 7th Hamas attack exacerbated the tensions. Impact of leadership changes. Damon Wilson, the new ED president, was criticized for focusing on media and image rather than traditional NED goals. Wilson's decision, including hiring Unn and supporting progressive agendas, faced backlash from longstanding members. Controversial practices. Accusations of NED operating as CIA cutout were blustered by historical admissions and recent controversies. The organization faced scrutiny for its funding decisions and internal policies. Dismissals and settlements. Unn was dismissed and received a substantial settlement for sex discrimination. Allen's dismissal was attributed to his marginalization following the Gray Zone incident and internal conflicts over the new management's direction. The leaked emails underscore significant ideological and operational divides within the NED, impacting its effectiveness and public image. The clash between the old guard and the new progressive elements within the organization illustrates a broader culture and political shifts occurring in many institutions. The fallout from the Gray Zone incident serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of coherent communication strategies and internal cohesion in politically sensitive organizations. Interesting. So let's look at an article, right? I'm going to talk about something that was talked about back on the 11th of April, 2024, where U.S. government funding pro-Ukraine activists that attacked America's media. So I was digging a little deeper because this article just wanted to understand more about what's going on. So let's look at some connection to broader themes real quick. We're talking about these leaked emails, and then we'll get into the other one. So institutional integrity and reform. The NED's internal conflict reflects broader challenges in reforming traditional institutions to accommodate new culture and political realities. Similar dynamics are observed in various government and non-government organizations. Even geopolitical influence and accountability, right? The role of the NED in international politics, especially within historical ties to CIA, raises questions about the accountability and transparency of organizations involved in regime change and democracy promotions. Media and public perception. The NED's handling of the Gray Zone incident demonstrates the power of media and public perception. Effective communication and media strategies are crucial in maintaining credibility and trust in public institutions. Cultural and ideological shifts. The internal civil war at NED mirrors broader culture and ideological societal shifts, where progressive ideas increasingly challenge traditional conservative values. This shift influences policy, leadership, and operational dynamics in various sectors. Impact of leadership. Leadership decisions profoundly impact organizational culture and direction, especially in transition times. The case of NED highlights how new leadership can bridge or widen existing divides within an institution. So now we're going to talk about Ukraine censoring information, U.S. State Department. Well, first, U.S. government funding pro-Ukraine activists that attack Americans' media. Then we're going to talk about Ukraine censoring information, U.S. State Department. Those were reported. One was reported back on April 11th of 2024, and one on the 28th of March 2024. So an investigation has revealed that U.S. Department through agencies like USAID and National Endowment of Democracy, NED, is funding Ukrainian organizations and media outlets that promote pro-Kiev narratives and label American critics of Ukraine and Russian propagandists. These efforts have raised concerns about the influence and control over media content and ethics of such practices. Funding and influence. Organizations funded by USAID and NED, such as New Voice of Ukraine, Vox Ukraine, and Detector Media, promote pro-Ukrainian government narratives. These groups have labeled American critics of Ukraine, including economists and journalists, as Russian propagandists. Targeting American critics. Prominent Americans targeted include Jeffrey Sachs, John Mearsheimer, Tucker Carlson, and Glenn Greenwald. Some Ukrainian media have criticized accurate reports from sources like New York Times, accusing them of spreading Russian disinformation attentively. The role of fact checkers. Ukrainian organizations funded by the U.S. act as fact checkers for meta platforms such as Facebook and Instagram to censor criticism under the guise of combating Russian disinformation. Interesting. Ethics and objectivity. The investigation highlighted concerns about these organizations' departure from traditional journalistic practices. The U.S. government claims to support independent media to strengthen democracies, but is accused of directly setting the agenda for these outlets. Interesting. Information warfare, right? Information warfare. The U.S. is heavily involved in the information war between Russia and Ukraine. There's a difficulty in distinguishing between content intended for foreign audiences and what influences Western media. These investigations that took place, right, into U.S.-funded Ukrainian media organization reveals a complex and ethical questionable landscape for information warfare. While intended to support Ukraine, these efforts blur the lines between independent journalism and state-sponsored propaganda. The targeting of American critics and the influence of public discourse raises significant concerns about media integrity and the role of government shaping narratives. It's important. That's why I went all the way back. So some of you, if you don't know what's going on, you know why now. They don't want you to know. So here's some connections. Geopolitical influences. The situation exemplifies the broader strategy of using media and information to influence geopolitical narratives, public opinion. Talk about that. Media ethics and independence. Information warfare and propaganda. Impact on public discourse, absolutely. U.S. foreign policy and public perception. The investigation reveals the complicity of U.S. foreign policies and its effort to manage perceptions abroad and at home. The dual role of shaping foreign audiences and influencing domestic media illustrates the challenges of maintaining transparency and accountability in foreign interventions. Also, a senior U.S. Department official, James Rubin, this was back in March, has criticized the Ukrainian government for its restrictive media practices, suggesting that more openness about battlefield realities would benefit the country's democratic aspirations. Ukraine has had a history of censorship, particularly against Russian-influenced media, and has intensified these efforts since the conflict with Russia escalated back in 2022. Both domestically and internationally, critics have raised concerns about these measures, noting that they undermine press freedom. Key points. The U.S. criticism of Ukrainian media control. James Rubin, a U.S. State Department official, urged Ukraine to be more transparent. This was months ago and less restrictive with media coverage, but it hasn't happened, has it? Rubin acknowledged Ukraine's progress towards democracy, but noted that this is not yet a fully fledged democracy, which affects media freedom. Ukrainian censorship practices. Ukraine has banned Russian social media and search engines since 2017. Censorship intensified after February 2022, with laws expanding government control over media and banning positive coverage of Russia. legislative and regulatory actions. And in late 2022, President Zelensky signed a law increasing the government's authority to regulate the media, which led to criticism from local and international bodies. The European Federation of Journalists stated that the new law contradicted European press freedom standards. Impact on journalists. Tight restrictions have been imposed on reporters' access to front lines, with credentials being revoked for unfavorable coverage. The New York Times reported that many Ukrainians are tired of state-controlled media, which they perceive as propaganda, and no doubt, right? International and domestic reactions. The new censorship laws spark criticism with Ukraine, and also from Western observers. The European Federation of Journalists and other international bodies have condemned these measures. The U.S. State Department calls for greater transparency. The U.S. State Department's call months ago for greater transparency highlighted the tensions between security measures and democratic values in Ukraine. Ukraine's restricted media practices, especially during wartime, are seen as undermining its democratic aspirations and credibility. The criticism from domestic and international entities suggests a need to balance the control of information for national security and the assurance of press freedom. So here are some connections: geopolitical dynamics and media control, right? Democratic aspirations versus security concerns, international influence and criticism, role of independent journalism, right? Public perception and propaganda, long-term implications for democracy. That's going to be it. That's going to do us this evening. Threw all that in, right? And it's what my videos are going to be about. They're showing all of you what's going on and trying to make more connections, right? Because there's a lot of connections. Let's check the time here. Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Hope you've enjoyed this video, some of the connections. Hope you get an idea now how everything is connected, right? Everything is connected, right? There's a play, there's a game. It's like chess. Everybody's getting their pieces in place, right? What's happening in Venezuela, it's happening everywhere. It's only a matter of time before the whole world's engulfed in this, right? It really is. America is getting closer. Right now, we're enjoying it. But at some point, we're all going to be embracing the side. But all this is connected. I'm a Bible guy. So I know in order for the next steps to get place, the whole world has to erupt in chaos, right? So, and we see that step by step by step, right? And we're going to keep connecting the dots, right? There's things going on around the world with everyone's governments. Dirty things are happening. Everybody's getting their chips in place, getting ready for the next step. Whatever the next step's going to be. Is it going to be World War III? Maybe not. Don't know. Could it happen right before the elections? It could. Or could it happen after the elections? No one knows. It can happen today, or I get off this video. It can happen anytime. But it's really coming, right? That's all I have. I love you all so much. Thank you for following.